Tonight, the deadline passes to reach a deal. Canadians face a massive rail shutdown.
This has a major impact on North American supply chain.
Governor Tim Walz.
Tim Walz, center stage at the DNC.
It's the honor of my life to accept your nomination for Vice President of the United States.
As Donald Trump fires back on Democratic days.
There's not a thing they've done well except cheat and lie.
New details on a triple homicide in Manitoba.
An absolute horrific act of intimate partner violence.
Plus, parents feel the pinch paying for school supplies.
Everything is so outrageous, it's ridiculous.
And 40 years later, the onstage reunion on The Rock.
I hope that Gloria is close by and that she can come up here.
Shania Twain reconnects with an old friend.
She treated me like one of the family.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Mirella Fernandez.
Good evening. Canada's two major railways confirmed tonight they've locked out thousands of employees. With conductors, engineers, and yard workers all off the job, rail shipments come to a standstill. About $1 billion worth of goods travel on the tracks every day. Let's get the details from CTV's Kathy Lee in Calgary. Kathy, what did CN and CPKC say?
Mirella, both companies say that they formally locked out employees represented by Teamsters, and that happened just after midnight Eastern Standard Time. This after the union, they say, did not respond to their final offer when it came to wages and it came to scheduling. So the companies say that the offer included wage increase as well as allowing workers to work fewer days in a month. Now, on the other side, Teamsters says that they have put several offers forward and none were taken seriously by the companies. They were saying that when it came to wages and when it came to scheduling and work-life balance, the companies made concessions about that. So they've been negotiating several months over these issues and have not come to any kind of conclusion. And unfortunately for tonight, this seems to be the case as well. But Teamsters says that they are still in talks with the companies.
All right, so what does it mean for all of the industries that rely on rail?
And there's a lot of industries, Mirella, that are going to be impacted by this work stoppage or this lockout. We're talking in the agriculture industry, the energy industry, the manufacturing industry. It's not just going to impact the economy within the country, but also international trade as well. I spoke to an Alberta farmer today who is in the middle of his harvest. So it's a busy time and he needs to move that grain in order to make money. And his biggest customer is China. And he's saying that China is starting to lose faith in the fact that he could be a reputable and reliable supplier. And this work stoppage is definitely not going to help things with him. So he definitely is worried, as are a lot of other people in various different sectors across the country.
Okay, and we should remind people, Kathy, it's not just goods, but people affected as well, because commuters in major cities will lose their ride.
Oh, yes. I can only imagine what the morning commute is going to be like tomorrow. This is going to impact 32,000 people who rely on the train to get to work, to get to wherever they need to go. And this is in Canada's three biggest cities. So we're looking at Vancouver, Montreal, and Toronto. And that's because some of those train lines run on tracks that are CP lines. And if those are suspended, that means those trains cannot move, and therefore commuters are going to have to find alternative routes. And already we're hearing that trains are impacted. The Milton line is down, as well as the lines in Hamilton City.
All right,
Mirella.
That's in Ontario. Kathy, appreciate the update. So it is day 3 of the Democratic National Convention. The big speaker tonight, Tim Walz, the nominee for vice president, is a former high school football coach. No surprise, that was his analogy.
It's the fourth quarter. We're down a field goal, but we're on offense and we've got the ball. We're driving down the field. And boy, do we have the right team. Kamala Harris is tough. Kamala Harris is experienced, and Kamala Harris is ready. Our job for everyone watching is to get in the trenches and do the blocking and tackling. 1 inch at a time, 1 yard at a time, 1 phone call at a time, 1 door knock at a time, 1 $5 donation at a time. Look, we got 76 days. That's nothing. There'll be time to sleep when you're dead. We're gonna leave it on the field. That's how we'll keep moving forward. That's how we'll turn the page on Donald Trump.
So remember, it's only been 15 days since the Minnesota governor was catapulted onto the national stage. Let's go to CTV's chief political correspondent, Vassy Kapelos in Chicago. Vassy, he really does command attention, but he didn't share much of his personal story tonight.
Yeah, I mean, he talked certainly about his family, and I think probably one of the most poignant moments of the entire convention so far, in which he referenced his love for them. And then they cut to a shot of his kids who were they were basically bawling, and his son stood up and pointed at him and said, "That's my dad." Like, I feel like it was like almost out of a movie. But he did focus more on sort of what he views as his accomplishments as the governor of Minnesota, talking about free lunches for kids, for example, a host of other things that he did as governor, more progressive ideals. He calls himself a progressive, not a centrist. I think to introduce people from more of a policy perspective, which is, interestingly, what organizers had told us would be the case with both Tim Walz and tomorrow with Kamala Harris. They wanted other people like Bill Clinton tonight, for example, like the Obamas last night, to talk about Donald Trump, to paint a contrast, to kind of quote unquote go low, right? To throw some shade at Donald Trump. They didn't want that to be the focus of Tim Walz's speech or Kamala Harris tomorrow night. And it certainly didn't seem tonight like that was the case, right? You heard that one clip there turning the page on Donald Trump. There were a few other references, but primarily he spoke about sort of what he has done as a legislator, as governor, and a little bit about his family, including that crying scene, which I think will probably be the viral moment from tonight.
All right, so there's a lot of confidence. We know that at the convention, but some are still adding a note of caution. But tell me about that.
I mean, the reality is, Morella, that yes, there is momentum here. There's a ton of energy. Everyone's focused right now on what's happening with the Democratic Party because of this convention. But the Republicans are still polling very closely to the Democrats. There's been some swings nationally, certainly. Kamala Harris has built very substantially on where Joe Biden was just 4 weeks ago, and in some swing states. But lots of it is within the margin of error. It's an incredibly, incredibly tight race. Very, even tighter than 2020 in many instances. And I think that's something that we have heard from, for example, Bill Clinton about just now. The whole last part of the speech from Tim Walz was all about motivating people to actually get out there and vote because certainly that has been an issue back in 2016, and there are so few voters that this comes down to. Tens of thousands, likely, maybe hundreds of thousands. So the ground game is going to be especially important, and it's difficult with such a truncated campaign, right? I think he was saying 75 or 76 days to go. That's it.
Yeah, it is a short window of opportunity for them. Vashti, thanks for that. So another heavy hitter dropped in at the DNC, Oprah Winfrey, the surprise guest of the evening. She spoke about how far America has come since segregation.
Soon and very soon, we're going to be teaching our daughters and sons about how this child of an Indian mother and a Jamaican father, two idealistic, energetic immigrants, how this child grew up to become the 47th president of the United States. That is the best of America.
A key political player also had the spotlight to make the case for Kamala Harris, former U.S. President Bill Clinton.
So in 2024, we got a pretty clear choice, it seems to me. Kamala Harris for the people, and 1 million, 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 1 million The other guy who's proved, even more than the first go-around, that he's about me, myself, and I. I know which one I like better for our country.
Former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi also spoke tonight, taking aim at Donald Trump over the January 6th insurrection.
Let us not forget who assaulted democracy on January 6th. He did. But let us not forget who saved democracy that day. We did.
So a lot of DNC speakers have been taking shots at Trump. Some of the quips seem to rattle the Republican leader, who fired back today. Let's go to CTV's Joy Malbin, also in Chicago. Joy, where was the GOP nominee? What did he have to say?
Morella, well, Democrats are celebrating here in Chicago. Donald Trump held his first outdoor rally since that attempt on his life.
Appearing in a bulletproof glass pen, Donald Trump took the stage outside for the first time since surviving that assassination attempt in Pennsylvania.
Come on, sheriffs.
Inviting law enforcement on stage before launching into a full-throated attack against his Democratic opponent, Kamala Harris.
Kamala, you know, she's comrade, the most radical left person ever to run for a high political office in our country.
Raising doubts once again about the election.
Our primary focus is not to get out the vote, it's to make sure they don't cheat.
Trump has been leading on issues like the economy and immigration, but since Harris replaced Joe Biden at the top of the ticket, Trump has struggled.
That's all they talk about, Trump.
It seems the Obama stinging takedown got under Trump's skin.
We do not need 4 more years of bluster and bumbling and chaos.
Did you see Barack Hussein Obama last night? Take little shots. He was taking shots at your president. You know, they always say, sure, please stick to policy, don't get personal. And yet they're getting personal all night long, these people. Do I still have to stick to policy?
Joined by his running mate, J.D. Vance, who blasted Harris over her role at the border.
If we give Kamala Harris a promotion and make her the president of the United States, the southern border is going to look like Walmart on Black Friday.
And taking a swipe at her running mate, Tim Walz, Republicans accusing him of embellishing his military record in the National Guard.
Don't send her stolen valor sidekick. Send a former Marine. Send J.D. Vance to be vice president.
The Trump ticket picking up new support from vaccine denier Robert Kennedy Jr., who reportedly plans to drop out of the race and endorse Trump.
And in an election this tight, every vote will count, Morella, as Democrats see this week as pivotal. Kamala Harris facing her biggest test yet when she addresses this convention tomorrow.
Joy Malbin in Chicago tonight. And CTV National News with Omar Sachedina will be live at the Democratic National Convention tomorrow night. That is when Kamala Harris officially accepts her party's nomination. Police and RCMP across this country are investigating a wave of bomb threats targeting Jewish establishments. Officers were on scene at this Calgary synagogue among more than 100 institutions that were sent identical emails. In Montreal, this rabbi was the one who received the message.
One reaction was not again. We've received threats in the past.
B'nai B'rith Canada, a Jewish advocacy group, says its offices in Toronto and Montreal were also targeted.
In the letter, it was specifically pointed out that the perpetrator or perpetrators intended to terrorize Canadians. This was an act of terror.
Authorities said no explosives were found. A horrific act of intimate partner violence. That's what RCMP are calling the triple homicide that rocked the small town of McCreary, Manitoba last week. 4 people were found dead, including the suspect. As CTV's Jeff Keel reports, he was well known to police.
Mounties say the man who shot and killed 3 people in McCreary and died by suicide had guns and his firearm license taken away, and there was also a protection order in place against him.
What I will be sharing is an absolute horrific act of intimate partner violence.
RCMP say their investigation found that after 1 a.m. last Friday, 41-year-old Marlon Glover, seen in this Facebook photo, forced his way into his ex-partner's home, a 37-year-old woman.
The entry was targeted, and the male and female were known to each other through a previous relationship.
She was able to escape into the woods. That's when Glover went to this house He killed the woman's parents and brother, and then he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound. The woman hid in the wooded area until police found her 11 hours later.
I can only imagine it must have been terrifying for her after the ordeal that she had endured.
People CTV News spoke to in the community Monday who knew Glover and the victims are in shock and disbelief.
I have no idea what happened, but it's just terrible. Yeah. It is. It's so terrible.
Court documents show the woman filed for and was granted a protection order against Glover on November 24th last year. That's when police say they seized 2 firearms, ammunition, and a possession license from Glover. Mounties are investigating how Glover had another weapon.
Unfortunately, we were unaware of any additional firearms. We were made aware of the 2, which were seized at that time.
In the protection order application, the woman says she broke things off with Glover. She said she feared for her life, that he was controlling, manipulative, a narcissist, and was stalking her at home and work. RCMP confirmed since November, officers responded to calls for service in relation to the order, but couldn't say how many times and if Glover violated the order.
The members attended and they dealt with those calls for service appropriately under the circumstances of those calls.
Jeff Keel, CTV News, Winnipeg.
Coming up.
A $12 binder is now $23.
Back to school, but on a budget. Plus.
Ridiculous!
A Shania Twain reunion, decades in the making. A conservative lawmaker has walked back a social media post she had blamed higher costs for human trafficking. Michelle Ferreri claimed the cost of living crisis has driven parents to traffic their own children. That post is now deleted from X. In a separate statement today, Ferreri said it was inartfully worded, adding that a cost of living crisis is in no way an excuse for human trafficking. Kids go back to school soon. That has parents seeking out sales on school supplies. Some things are more expensive, and as CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson tells us, that has some moms and dads getting creative to stay on budget.
The post-COVID era of massive inflation, shopping for just about anything can leave you feeling flustered.
A $12 binder is now $23. It's a little crazy.
It might seem that way with some school supplies and snack time staples now 20 to 30% more expensive than just 3 years ago. Here's what's changed since this time last year. The single biggest back-to-school jump at the humble cookie and cracker, up more than 5%. Stationery is close behind, rising just under 5%, followed by textbooks and supplies. Teachers' pets will pay more for that apple, and getting to school on transit is 3% more expensive. At the other end of the spectrum, cellular plans are down 10%, kids' shoes will cost more than 8% less, and their clothing is down significantly as well. Stocking up on paper at home is more than 4% cheaper, and a bit of a break on that tomato packed in the lunchtime sandwich.
Consumers are looking for any way possible to save money, yet still provide their children with what they need for back to school.
And that expert says more low to mid-income parents are finding those savings using apps such as Temu that ship directly from China. They're also using technology to turn back the clock.
An example of that would be thrifting, Facebook Marketplace. It's a bit of a badge of honor because people realize that, you know what, you're kind of helping the environment by giving the product a second or third life. And you're also saving money. Saving money is cool.
Saving money is cool, and so is picking up what you need in store. The Retail Council of Canada says 3/4 of back-to-school shoppers prefer that to buying online. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
Straight ahead. A surprise slumber party on the seafloor. Canadian baseball star Joey Votto is hanging up his cleats.
That's it. I'm done. I am officially retired from baseball.
The 40-year-old first baseman signed a minor league contract with his hometown Blue Jays last spring, but he spent most of his career with the Cincinnati Reds. Votto earned 6 All-Star selections, 1 Gold Glove, and an MVP award over 17 seasons. Scientists in Australia caught an amazing sight off the coast of Victoria. These are sharks, thousands of them sleeping on the seafloor. This was caught by an underwater robot. All the sharks were female and most likely had stopped to feed before their journey to lay eggs. After the break, the friendship that came before fame.
That don't impress me much. So yeah, got the moves, but have you got the touch?
Shania Twain reunites with a longtime fan. It's hard to recall a time when Shania Twain wasn't a country singing sensation, but 40 years ago, she was just starting out. When first on tour, she met a young fan, and the two recently reconnected on The Rock. CTV's Garrett Berry has that.
I hope that Gloria is close by and that she can come up here.
It was a reunion decades in the making.
I still have a Polaroid of us together.
It's been about 40 years since the country legend crashed here, in what is, once again, Gloria Power's house, just outside of St. John's. They were both teenagers then, and met when Shania was playing with a small touring band at the local mall.
A fight broke out right next to me, typical, and I heard a female voice saying, "Get her out of there, she's going to be hurt." You know, the next break then she, instead of just doing her thing, she came and sat with me and, and it just went from there.
The pair spent about 2 weeks together, then wrote letters for a bit, but decades passed. While Power always believed that Shania remembered her,
I wasn't really 100% sure, because where has she been in the last 41 years? How many people has she met in the last 41 years?
Last Saturday, it was all confirmed. This emotional reunion in front of thousands of fans.
I stayed at her house. She treated me like one of the family.
It was just like two friends getting together who haven't seen each other in a while. I wasn't nervous. I walked across the stage. I just couldn't wait to embrace her and give her that big hug,
The pair had a reunion backstage too after Saturday's concert. And for Power, Shania hasn't changed a bit. Still that kind lady who kept her out of trouble all those years ago. Garrett Perry, CTV News, St. John's.
That's a wrap on the day. Thanks for sharing your time with us. Omar Sachedina will be live at the Democratic National Convention in Chicago tomorrow night. We leave you with some of Stevie Wonder's performance from the DNC.